President Trump is imposing a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico starting on February 1st. And his stated reason is because of the border crisis, both the north and the south, of illegals and other contraband that is coming across as a means of getting these two countries to control what is going on their side of the border. This is fantastic. Again, this demonstrates, remember when Biden said that there was nothing he could do about the border crisis, that this is a congressional issue? The president had the power to impose these tariffs. And that right there would have gone a long way. Just that alone would have went a long way of preventing a lot of the problems that we had as a result of the policy of the Biden administration and the mess of during his tenure, the mess that was on our borders of the fentanyl, of the violence, of the human trafficking, of the tens of millions of economic migrants, not political migrants, but economic migrants that came across the border. I mean, it just goes to show you that, yes, they could have done something. They didn't do anything because they wanted these people, they wanted these problems, because it benefits them politically and it benefits their donors to having the cheap labor. But Trump is going to impose a 25% tariff, and of course this is great. Hopefully this will be the end of Trudeau too. Trudeau should have been out on his rear end years ago. In fact, he should have never been elected to begin with. He was just a pretty face that talked a good game. He was the Canada's version of Gavin Newsom that we have here in the United States. He's just, absurd as a human being. I mean, the guy is just, if you actually do some research into him, he's just a terrible person. But nonetheless, the liberals, because they don't care, they want to get their agenda across, their nihilistic, woke agenda across. And Canada is very susceptible to this because it's a very egalitarian culture, which is susceptible to that kind of ideas, which is a series of bad ideas that led to the bad results that you have there. Thus, we have the problem in Canada, and thus you had some of the human migrations and drugs that are coming across from the northern border. Now to the south, the Mexico-American relations have always been interesting. You got to remember that the Mexicans were enticed by Germany twice, actually, to attempt to invade the United States, to occupy the United States, as opposed to worrying about what was going on in Europe. So you got to remember that. Mexico is another thing about Mexico. Mexico actually needs the United States for their economic well-being. They need the resources and trade with the United States to even have a manufacturing base. So Mexico, yes, does better economically than the rest of Latin America, and that is because of its relationship with the U.S. It's very easy from a policy perspective to change the policy in Mexico to fit with what the United States requires. That is just the reality of it. That's just the reality of, because of several factors, but nonetheless, that's what needs to happen. Mexico, a lot of the problems that we've had with drug cartels come right out of Mexico, obviously. Mexico is a country that doesn't completely control within, it doesn't have, the government doesn't have total control within their country, thus flourishing drug cartels, flourishing of terrorist groups that set up camp there and then go across the border. You got to also remember that the Chinese and the Russians set up a spy base in Mexico and also in Cuba to spy on the United States as well. Mexico's allowed this. This is all a bunch of nonsense that needs to stop. And with Trump, it will stop starting with a 25% tariff starting in a couple of weeks, actually starting in 1 week from now. And we have the power to ramp up those tariffs even more. Remember, Mexico and Canada need the United States more than we need them. So keep that in mind.